Great, good. Yeah.
Good. Welcome everybody online. Thank you for being there. All right, so we're going to spend a few minutes right around 8:05. We'll do some role play, but let's just talk just a little bit about a little more about the listing presentation from the standpoint of the listing presentation. And we talked about like what's best. Is it prospecting? Is it closing? Is it listings? And the fact is that if you want to control the market, you want to control buyers, it's about getting more listings. And it doesn't mean that we don't have a buyer's market. We actually have a really strong buyer's market. But the reality is that at minimum, there's not a single agent in this company who should not be spending at least 1 hour or more a day focused on just simply taking a listing. And I've realized, like, I'll meet agents all the time, right? Their focus points are all buyers, and they forget the importance of listings, and they never really figure out how to create a life with listings. And so as you start looking at this, just recognizing that every tool, every system, every structure, every skill set is of course applicable to whether it's a buyer, to whether it's a seller, but just really be thinking about, okay, how do I maneuver through the listing process effectively? And just a couple of key things, right? Of course, make sure you're pre-qualifying your people. And then when we talk about the listing, just a pure skill set, I want to talk about what I would consider on the buying side or the selling side, little mini closes, or I like to call them trial closes. I haven't talked about this. We've talked about the actual outline of the presentation. We've talked about transitional statements. We've talked about level shifting. We've talked about pattern interrupts, which, well, maybe we haven't. Maybe someone else has. I haven't. But for me, trial closes are really interesting because a trial close it's a monitor. It's almost a regulation of, being able to determine where are we in this process. And so what I've realized over the years is that if I will do these, what I call trial closes, they really help me to determine where we are in the sales process. And they're really very simple. I mean, it could be as simple as we're sitting there on a listing presentation, or again, it doesn't matter whether it's a buying presentation, but it would be basically, hey, tell me, how are we doing? And so I just want to give you a few things that help me with these trial closes. So one of them would be that simple one. Tell me, how are we doing? I'll sometimes finish it with this way, which is, are we on the right track? Now, the first time I discovered this was I was in a listing appointment. And what I did is I said it was a condo out on 5600 South. I think it's called Chestnut, right there in the river bottom, right there in Murray. And I remember I was sitting there. We were actually standing at this gal's kitchen bar, and in this condo, and she needed to sell it. And I'd been there probably for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then I said, hey, tell me, how are we doing? Am I on track with what I'm sharing with you? And I'll never forget, right then and there, she said, yeah, I'm sold. And it threw me off so much that it made me realize, wait a second here. I'll go in and give this 30, 45 minute, 1 hour presentation. And then at the very end, I'm asking, so Isaac, Jason, so how do you feel about what I've shared with you? How do you feel about getting started? And oftentimes, of course, they're saying yes. But what I found is I could shorten every single part of the sales process by asking these trial closes. And so after that moment, after that little experience, I listed it and we sold it. And in fact, actually, I remember I got another listing in the area just because of it. I did a little just listed around it and listed another condo in there around the same time, many years ago. But I started looking and say, okay, what are some of these ways that I can ask these trial closes? So for me, just these and they're pretty casual. They're not intense. They're not overwhelming, but just think about it. If you're with a buyer, hey, just tell me, are we on the right track? Are we looking at the right property? Are we how are you feeling about things right now? And that little part of it, what in whether and it's and I found that it's about every 5 or 10 minutes, just asking, are we on track? How do you feel about what we've talked about so far? And I can hear this lady's words in my mind. Oh, I'm already sold. And that is then what got me to realize two things. So we're going to do these two things. And that is, I think this has been talked about, but there's two parts to the presentation. And that is choose me, choose a price. My gosh, what am I doing with two S's up here? Holy cow, can't write this morning. All right. So number one is you choose me. And so what I realize is that in any presentation, whether it's buyer or seller, but let's just say specifically the seller, once I know they've determined that they're going to work with me, well, then together we can choose a price. And I've talked a little bit about this, but when I realized that I could get these trial closes and figure out whether or not they've chosen me or not, well, then I was able to quickly move over and say, let's talk about the price. And so as I've been on these appointments over the years, I've really concluded that oftentimes I watch agents, they immediately go in and talk about price, immediately go in and talk about what they're going to charge them. And yet the person's never chosen them to even work with them. So whenever I'm asked as a general statement, Aubrey, when someone says, what's the price of the home? Or as they say, what are you going to charge me? My standard statement is simply this. Isaac, you know what? Commissions and price or commissions are completely negotiable in the state of Utah. But what I'm conclusive of is that if you decide to work with me, then we can pick a price and a commission that will work. In fact, what I've also realized is it doesn't matter if you aren't convinced that I can sell the home or you're willing to work with me or you've chosen me to work with, well, then it doesn't matter what price or commission I charge you. So let's first determine whether we're going to work together or not. And if we determine we're going to work together, then collectively, as I know I've talked about this before, but as a team together, united, we're going to pick a price and we'll get a commission that's fair for both you and me. Fair enough? Fair enough. Great. So let's continue to make sure we're going to choose each other and we're going to work together. Then we'll choose a price. And so these trial closes became really important because what I was able to do is determine we're going to work together. Oh, once we know we're going to work together, just like that gal out in the, I think, Chestnut condos or something like that, then we were able to determine the price. And it made it so simple. It wasn't adversarial. And so don't put the cart before the horse. Don't get into the pricing, to the commissions before you know whether they're going to choose you or not. And I think it's a really big mistake, right? I think the car business is one of the most perfect examples of this, which is you go onto a lot and you say, how much is the car? And they'll say usually something like, well, Isaac, it's stickers at $30,000. Would you like to drive it? And what they want you to do is they want you to get excited about the experience. They want you to choose the car first, then what? Then we'll choose the price. It's the same principle. And so the thing is that when we get this thing backwards and we start talking about pricing and commissions and everything else, but the decision of, are we going to work together? Well, that's a problem. So remember that in every presentation, you want to get it to where, have we chosen to work together? Yes, great. Now let's determine and let's choose a price for this home. Make sense? Any thoughts on that? Okay. So no, yes. No,
I have kind of a question.
Yes. I'm gonna go back to this in a second.
Yeah,
a few more trial closes.
Yeah, I love that too. So as far as I have a presentation this tomorrow, actually.
Okay.
It's Friday.
Okay.
And I did some pre-qualifying over the phone. I talked to them, and I said, "Is there anything else that you expect from me when I get out there?" And said, "We want to go over the price. Like that's like the most important thing is price. Like." When I get there, they're gonna expect me to go over price. I told them we'll go over that. When I sit down with you. how do you interject, choose me before going over price, which is the most important thing to do.
Well, you could get right to that in the very beginning, especially to your point. They said the most important thing is price. I probably would put the elephant in the room and I'd probably say, hey, that's in the room. And I would say, hey, Aubrey, look, one of the most important parts, as you said on the phone, is the fact that we need to discuss price. But I've also realized that it doesn't matter what price we choose or what I charge you. I do the same thing I just said. It doesn't matter what I charge you. It doesn't matter what the price of the home is if you are convinced that I'm the one you're going to use. So let's first at least determine, are you and I going to work together? Have you determined that? Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'd work with you. So really what you're saying is, and then let's go to this next statement. And this is, I haven't done this, but I was going to get to it. But we're going to do a few, I still want to go back to trial closes, but this is what I would say. Now that, we have decided to work together, let's determine a price. And once they've done that, right? Once they've decided that, hey, now once we've decided to work, so is it fair to say that now that we've decided to work together, another way you could say this, now that we've decided to work together, is it safe to assume that if we chose a price, we could sign these contracts this evening, this afternoon, or this morning? Right? Is it fair, now that we've decided to work together, is it safe to assume? I didn't write it in there, but that's how I usually would say it. I'd say, hey, Aubrey, now that we've determined that we're going to work together, of course, we need to decide on a price. We need to work on the commission. We need to make sure this is working for you. Is it safe to assume, though, that we're going to work together if we are able to determine the correct price and the commission? And I hope that you're going to say, well, yeah, great. Well, now you're done. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing in regards to marketing. It doesn't matter what, company you're with. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. The only thing that matters is the price, but get them to acknowledge that they're going to work with you. So if I was on that appointment and say, hey, I know on the phone, we talked about how important that price is. And on top of that, what actually nets the price is, of course, your closing costs, the commissions we charge. I have a net sheet, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. Before we jump into pricing, commissions, and the dynamics of that, let me ask you, have we decided that we're going to work together at this point? And if we are, then let's make some sense of this pricing. But I'm going to get them to determine at some level, I'm going to get them to decide that they're going to work with me. I'm not going to let them off the hook. I'm going to make sure that they say, yep, I'm going to work with you. Great, let's decide on a price. And once I know that there's a price. Now, in fairness, Aubrey, I've gotten good enough in this business where I've been on a handful of appointments with Isaac recently. And the fact is that he probably hasn't heard me say it exactly like that, because in fairness, I already know that we're working together. Like I can feel it, sense it, know it. Now, actually, I would say the one at home that we listed in Alpine, I would say that they finally said, yep, let's work together. Great. Now let's come and decide on a price and a commission. And I did say it, but he was so new in the business, I don't know if he even heard it. But they made a decision that they called him and said, hey, I think they called us back. We kept it, and they made a decision. We're going to work with you. Okay, now that you've decided to work with me or with us, let's determine a price and let's determine a commission. So I on that appointment again, I would go back to, hey, I know how important price is. I also recognize that it doesn't matter what we charge. It doesn't matter what price we put on the home if you aren't convinced that I can sell your home. So let me ask you, have you decided to work with me? And then or is there some things I may share with you in regards to our company, how we're going to handle the process, what we're going to do to get the home sold? Is there anything that's important to you that you would like me to share with you so that we know that we're going to work together as we determine a price and a commission that works for both of us? Any thoughts?
No, that's perfect. I feel like most people, want to be, I don't know. I talked about this earlier, like this week. Most people feel they need to combat or fight you,
right?
And it's almost like they're trying to protect themselves and like trying to work with you,
correct,
against you. So I feel like,
and I actually bring that up. Well, in fact, one of the last listings we just took over there in Pepperwood, I said those very words. I said, look, we're not against each other. We're not adversaries. It's not me against you and you against me. And you don't need to fight with me. I want you to net the most money possible. I want you to get the most money possible. I want you to sell as fast as possible. I want every part of this to come true for you. So just know I'm on your side. So there should never be a time where we're in a place of adversity. We should be in a place of collaboration. We should be in a place of, navigating through this process together. And that's what we should making sure we're doing together. Okay. All right. Any thoughts? No.
What if they're not, like, say that you ask that question and they're not like completely convinced of work yet?
Well, then you would continue. Well, then then you would, if they say, well, I don't know. You say, well, great. What's the question I'd probably ask? Now let's do two things. If I've asked that question and I've given most of my presentation about the two core things, I have found out about their needs, their wants, their expectations. I have shared what I do to market and to expose the property. Those two things often are the two things that happen prior in these trial closes. How do you feel about what I've shared with you so far? Oh, I'm sold. Great. So is it safe to assume we're going to work together if we can determine a price and a commission on your home? Well, it sure is. That's great. All right, let's switch gears. Let's jump into that. Anything else you want me to share with you marketing wise? If they say, well, I don't know, I probably would say something like, I might kid with them just because that's what I often do now. And I would say something like, well, I know you don't know, but if you did know and you had to choose, what would you choose? I'd probably, if they said, well, I'm not sure, well, share with me, Isaac, what is it that you need to hear from me? What is it you want to know more about? What is it I have not shared with you that would convince you? The fact that we sold nearly 5,000 homes last year. What is it that you need to hear from me to be convinced that I can take care of you and take care of the sale? So I'd go back to where are the doubts? Where are the concerns? What is it that you're unsure of? And if they say, well, it's just the price, great. So is it safe to assume we can work together if we determine the price? And they'll sometimes say like, well, I'm not sure, because they're in their mind, they're still thinking, oh, price. Like, and again, I just want to make sure if we get the price right, then it sounds like you and I are a good fit for one another, right? That's another way I say it. We're a good fit. Yeah, we're a good fit. Great. Let's determine a price. Jason?
I think one thing to keep in mind is we are doing a trial close, and if the chances of them saying, yeah, we're ready to go, is actually lower in my mind than let's get on track again. Like, if we're doing a final close, we've got everything done, that's different, but trial, we're just trying to get the temperature,
Correct.
figure out where we're at.
Yep.
I'm okay.
Temperature gauge, like where are we with this thing?
If they say, oh, I've just got questions, great, now I know where to go with my presentation, now I can give, more
Perfectly
about
said.
what they want and then move forward.
Perfectly said. Yeah, exactly. So these trial closes, tell me how we're doing. Are we on track? Do you like, another way to say it is, do you like what you're hearing? Is there anything, do you find value? Another way is it, is this valuable to you, Isaac? Is this something you want me to do when we get this home on the market? Is this something you'd like me to do when we put this home on the market tonight? Is this something that's a whole other thing we can talk later this week on it, but we could talk about assumptiveness and how assumptive should we be. But these trial closes have been very, very important for me over the years, because it's done two things. One, it makes sure I know I'm on the right track. But number two, it shortens the presentation radically. Guys, let me tell you something. In most cases, within seconds of you being there, they have determined, oh, this is someone I could work with. They may put up a little wall. They may give you a little of a little object. Let me tell you something. They know right when you've walked through the door. They know whether or not they're going to work with you within seconds of you being there. There's books written about 3 seconds, 8 seconds. I mean, they've already determined it at that point. So, okay. Any thoughts?
If you're on the presentation, they already kind of said yes to you in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah.
I've always thought that they're really cheering for you at that moment, that they're like, oh my gosh, I hope this is the person. Think about this when you're going on a presentation, they're hoping that you're the right person. They're not sitting there going, well, let's have this person go out, waste our time because we know that we're not going to ever work with them. They're having you there because they're championing or cheering for the idea that maybe you're the one who's going to be able to help them and be able to get it done. Make sense? Okay. So again, these trial closes, if I'm on the buying side, hey, are we on track? How are you feeling about what we're doing? How are you feeling about the process? How are you feeling about putting an offer in? It just make sure you're asking these things far sooner. Then determine that we're going to choose me to work together. Then this scenario, you could say, choose a price or we'll choose a home or find a home. Right? But have you chosen to work with me? Yes, I'm your agent that I'm going to buy a home with. Great. Let's go find the house. But get a commitment that we're going to work together. And that, of course, it will eventually you're going to get the buyer broker signed, or you're going to get the listing contract signed. Okay. Any thoughts, comments? Ruby? No?
Great, the 3+ questions, I was asking 3 more, if they have any questions, so if you're doing a trial close and you can ask 3 more questions. They'll just self-discover themselves.
Yeah, well, and for me, those 3 questions, right, always, well, when I always talk about them, and I don't know if this is what you're speaking to, but for me, if they say no, well, I'm not sure. The most important thing you can do is to ask 3 questions where you get this commitment in relationship to them getting to say yes. So I want to get yeses after I get nos. So they say, Aubrey, I don't know. We really need to think about it. It's a big decision. For me, when I'm asking 3 questions, I want to ask 3 questions that get a yes. Hey, Aubrey, do you feel I can sell your home? Do you feel Century 21 could do the things they need to do to get your home sold? Hey, do you feel like the price that we've talked about would get the home sold along with this incredible marketing plan and plan of action I've got for you? Well, yes, great. I'm going to get a bunch of yeses after I get nos. And just as a general rule, if you guys think about that, that would be a really good thing to consider, is that anytime, and this is such another deep portion of the closing process, but just you get nos, get yeses. If you're getting nos, get yeses. And as a general rule for years, I've talked about asking 3 questions to rebuild that connection, rebuild that rapport. Because the moment they say no, you're out of rapport, because you want them to sign. You want them to sign by a broker. You want them to sign a listing contract. Well, when they said no, all of a sudden rapport is broken. So how do you rebuild it? You ask questions. And one of the things I've realized over the years is get questions where they say yes, because yeses are far more positive than nos. And then, of course, I've joked about it. They turned closes into no's, because I know that people like to say no. So that's why we say, is there anything else you'd like me to do? No. Any reason why we can't get started today? No. Great. Any reason why we can't take some, anything else you'd like to come to? No. I mean, I just realized people love to say no. So I love to play those games. I mean, this is the artistry of this stuff, guys. This is the fun part of this stuff. It's where you really truly come to mastering your craft and getting it nailed and saying, okay, I'm going to really figure out how to be a master communicator. And if you master your communication, which some of you are very good in here, it's not that you're not, but man, I can get better. You can get better. Just always focus on, how do I become a better communicator? It's the most important part of this. I mean, 30 years of marriage has taught me, how do I communicate better, right? It's all about every part of your life. You want to excel in it, it's about how you communicate. It always will be. So we have to be a master communicator. All right. Any thoughts? Any thoughts online, guys or gals? All right, let's do some affirmations, and then we'll do a little bit of role play even after.